Time to pull up a chair and talk some Dynasty football. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and this is the Rider Dynasty podcast presented by Gridiron Ratings. Tonight, we continue our 2022 Divisional Debrief series discussing the players and teams you need to know before your drafts. Tonight, we are hitting the NFC and AFC West. We have quite a panel assembled today. As always, starting with my co-hosts, we have Justin and Don. Good to see you, gentlemen.
Good to be here, man.
Also joining us tonight is the host of Decoding Devi, the co-host of What the Fantasy, and a writer for IDP Guys. You can find him on Twitter at HayB3. It's Brandon Haye. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Man, we've been friends for a long time, so it's good to finally get you on the pod.
Definitely.
And pulling up a chair for the first time on the Rod Pod, you may know him from his work with FF Faceoff, or more specifically, his amazing work on the annual Mental Health Podathon. You can find him on Twitter at the FF Realist. It's Michael Hauff. How are you doing, sir?
Good, man. How's it going? It's a pleasure to be here, and ready to talk a little bit NFC, AFC West.
Man, a couple things I want to ask you about first. One, your logo is my favorite logo.
Yeah.
In the entire industry.
All right.
Hands down. It reminds me of like a 1940s propaganda poster. Did you come up with that logo?
That was I used when I started out, because Anthony and me, we started FF Faceoff, but we used to be with Gridiron Experts. And at the time, the guy who ran that wanted to have us do a different podcast with fantasy data, and he made all these pictures and stuff. And so that one came up, and I was like, I really like that. I was like, I'm going to keep that. So I took it and I kept it. So, it's kind of like when you work on a movie and then you steal something from the set. Like, I took that from the set. So that is now mine. So, yeah. But
that is awesome. Now, can you tell me a little bit more about the genesis of your podathon? How did all that start?
I mean, the genesis was really, and I know a lot of people always thank Scott Fish for everything, but really it was seeing what Scott Fish and the guys who do the SFB Podathon, Sal Lito and everybody else, that kind of inspired me to say we could do good in this community, because this community, listen, as much as we bicker back and forth, as much as we fight about picks and takes and this and that on Twitter, we're a very giving bunch, and we're a bunch that comes together. So that kind of organically came together with me hearing about Hayden Hurst's story. So I did a lot of digging, contacted Hayden's agent. Hayden's agent then sent me over to the foundation. And I mean, I've had direct communication with either Hayden or the foundation ever since. And they are very easy to work with. They love that we do this every year. They get excited about it. And over the last 3 years now, we've raised right around $13,000 or so for the Hayden Hurst Family Foundation. So, which all, goes to support mental health in youth and adolescents. And also they've started to integrate some of the military as well, because we should take care of those guys and gals as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's a daunting task every year, but when I'm in the middle of it and I'm getting messages about how it's affecting and helping people, it's very rewarding to do.
Well, I am so glad that you do it. It's something that's not often discussed, especially among males, is their mental health.
For sure.
And what is needed to support each other. And I love that, you added in veterans who are coming back after sometimes seeing some of the worst things a human person being can see.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm a huge admirer of yours and the work that you do for mental health. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
Now, is there ways that we can continue to donate? Do you primarily only work with the Hayden Hurst, or are there other charities that we can?
That's the one that I primarily work with. I mean, I'm sure that if you go on to Google and take a look at, certain, I'm sure there's various mental health. I believe Adam Thielen does something as far as mental health, but I think his is more centered around the Minnesota area. But you could always go to HaydenHurstFamilyFoundation.com and check out Hayden's story, because that's the thing too. That's the other cool thing that I liked about this is a lot of people in the fantasy community didn't really know Hayden's story until we started doing this podathon. So you can check out some of his story, and they have other places that they work with as well, and there's links there too, so you can get all that stuff.
Well, again, thank you very much. And hey, if you're listening to this, watching this, wherever you are, if you have a couple of bucks, go to the Hayden Hurst Foundation. You can Google it. It's easy to find. Donate a little bit of money and help somebody who's in need. Now, gentlemen, let's get right to the main topic. Last episode, Ryan Hallam from Fantasy Alarm joined us to break down the AFC and NFC North. If you missed the episode, please check it out on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. But tonight, we continue our divisional debrief series. We will discuss each and every team, providing you with one player you must draft, one player you should avoid, and one sleeper who you should stash. So let's get right to it with the AFC West. We're going to Vegas, baby. Vegas. Michael, what is happening in Sin City?
A lot of good things offensively. I mean, all things are looking up. Devontae Adams is now there. Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr, you're looking at if you're looking at waiting at the position, I mean, I think that Kirk Cousins is really the guy to go for. But if you're looking for somebody else to wait on the position there, I think Derek Carr is a very valuable player there. He could potentially be a top 12 quarterback. The only thing that kind of concerns me as to what they have going on, I'm telling you that I'm still drafting Hunter Renfrow. I'll tell you that he's a player to target too, because I think his draft cost, this is kind of a hypothetical, but I think had they not gone with Devontae Adams, I think that Hunter Renfrow's ADP would be higher than it is now. The one thing that concerns me is last year he had about I believe it's right around a 31%. I got this right here, 31.1% target share inside the 20 for the Raiders last year. So you got to imagine that's going to get gobbled up a little bit by Devontae Adams. So that's one thing to look out for, maybe as far as expectation, as far as stats. That's a player that I would definitely grab. I mean, you're obviously going to grab a Devontae Adams, of course. That goes without saying. If I'm looking to avoid a player, I'm not avoiding him completely, but I am a little concerned about Darren Waller, because you enter a scenario where mouths to feed. That famous thing where we all say that, mouths to feed. That's one thing I'd keep an eye on, because I'm not sure if he's going to dominate the targets like he used to. There is also a new offensive regime in there, of course, with McDaniel in the fold. But I want to, when I'm playing fantasy, I like to avoid problems. I like to work smart, not hard. So I'm avoiding Josh Jacobs. I don't trust what's going on there with him. Obviously, there was a lot of smoke with the whole, look how much work he's getting in the preseason. That's normally not something that you see. So that's a little concerning for me. And I think Zamir White is going to do some damage, probably more so in the passing game out of the flats. But still, something doesn't smell right for me with Josh Jacobs there. And I used to be a big supporter of his, but right now I would tell you that I would probably be avoiding him, going with some other running backs from some other teams at that spot.
It's hard to disagree with you about Josh Jacobs. All the news out of camp is how Amir Abdullah is stepping up into a James White type role. Zamir White looks good. I mean,
and Kenyon Drake.
Still
there.
I mean, they have a lot of weapons. And if Josh McDaniels had anything to do with how the Patriots use their running backs,
right,
that could be a scary situation. Now, do you have a sleeper on this team?
If I have a sleeper, I mean, see, here's the thing. When we talk about a sleeper, we have to remember that us here on this, talking on this podcast, people who are on Twitter every single day, we know who Zamir White is. But you guys know I was just talking to you off air about my buddy who just now opens up his fantasy football magazine and he's saying, which of these guys should I keep? He does not know who Zamir White is. So if you are watching and if you're just opening up your fantasy magazine, there's no shame in that. You're busy, you lead busy lives, and your wives probably appreciate you more. I would look at Zamir White. I do think he could be a sleeper. Again, I know that's, when I say that to you guys are like, well, yes, of course, but to me, I always try and think in terms of fantasy. I always try and think of the guy who's coming onto the app, the guy or gal who's coming onto the app who doesn't digest this 24/7 and needs that sort of direction, and to not give them these outlandish takes. So I'm not going to give you some crazy take and say, oh, Mac Hollins is going to be the wide receiver 1. I'm not going to do that to you. So I would look at it as Amir White. I do think he can be a sleeper to some of the novice fantasy players out there.
Well, I like what you said. That's absolutely true. We get caught in our own bubble.
Yeah.
We listen to each other's content. We read these deep dives, and most fans simply turn on their computer and dust off whatever magazine they found at the local drugstore before their draft. Now, somebody I'm looking at as a sleeper for Dynasty, and especially in tight end premium, is Foster Moreau. That's somebody who I think is, especially if Waller, I know Waller just came back from his injury, but if he misses any time, Moreau played well last year as a second tight end with 373 yards, 3 TDs. He's a big play tight end. He finished as tight end 8 in yards per target overall. So keep an eye on Foster Moreau. And if you have a deep bench, I would stash him there. All right, gentlemen. So Waller's back. Amir Abdul is playing a James Tight role. And DK has them at 8.5 wins. 8.5. Now, strength of schedule, according to Sharp, is the 30th easiest schedule. So, third hardest. Tough schedule. Michael, over, under, 8.5 wins.
I'm going with over. I believe in the offense, and I know McDaniel had his trouble in Denver, but I am going over. I think he's hopefully more mature. So, over.
We're going the over. Don, are you going over, under 8.5?
I'm taking the over on that as well. I like the offense. And yeah, the West is going to brutalize each other, but still, that offense is just too good.
Justin?
I'm taking the under. Their defense is not going to be able to keep up with the AFC West offenses.
My contrarian friend, I love that. Brandon?
I'm going to go with the over also. I know that division is going to be really brutal, but I really like everything they have in offense. And I think Derek Carr showed that, he went through all that adversity last year. And I agree with Michael about, him being a borderline quarterback 1, top 12 quarterback. I think he's really going to step forward this year.
Man, that puts me in a quandary. We have 3 overs and 1 under. I'm going to go under.
Join the dark side.
I think that they finish 4th in that division. And I don't know if the 4th team in that division is going to have 9 wins. I don't know if that's a strong reasoning, but it's a reason. So I'm going to go with the under. It's time to get Rocky Mountain high. Don, tell me about the Broncos.
So Denver's coming into an interesting position here because it's a whole lot of change and a whole lot of new toys to go in. Mainly, it's the new conductor in Russ. And Russ is the player that I'm actually high on. And if I have the opportunity to, I'm going to try and get him. With Russ Wilson going to turn 34 mid-season here, he's going somewhere between 9 and 11, depending on your league format and everything. Realistically, to finally get him an opportunity in an offense that's going to allow him to turn it loose and throw consistently throughout the duration of the season, we may finally get the point where we don't get the midseason Russ Wilson lull, and I'm there for it. I'm excited to see what he can do with some very talented wide receivers and a very diverse offense. And really, I just want to see what he can do. And at this point, depending on where your draft position is and where people tend to be in dynasty land when they start to get to players in that 33, 34 age class, and teams that aren't competing right now start to jettison those types of players, he's a kind of player that I would like to target in my acquisition strategies throughout.
Yeah, especially going 81st overall as the QB 10. I mean, he has the weapons. You would think he could finish at least at 10, if not higher. I like that as a must draft. Who are you avoiding?
So it's a little later and a little further down the line, but I want no part of Melvin Gordon this year. I mean, it's not exactly a hot take to say that he's pretty much worked his way out of the pecking order. When a team brings you back on a 1-year contract at $2.5 million and you're happy to have it, it's saying something. He's turning 29, and that's like the end for a lot of these guys, even though his mileage clock isn't as high as some of the other guys because of his age coming out of college. I still think that offense gets really strongly turned over to Williams this year. So for me, going right around 98, there are better places to invest that draft capital than Melgo at this point in his career.
Yeah, I saw Melvin Gordon's the clip from his press conference today where he reiterated that. He said the team wants Javonte to be the guy. And I mean, it was just one of the real conversations that sometimes you get from a player where they realize the writing on the wall.
Yep.
Doesn't mean he's not going to fight. Doesn't mean he's not going to produce.
And it doesn't mean there's not value there. You're absolutely right.
But yeah, do you have a sleeper on this team? Somebody who you want to snatch up?
So us in the dynasty world knew about KJ Hamler before, but he's finally going to get his real opportunity. And the opportunity came as much from him coming back from an injury as it is with Tim Patrick having some significant bad luck. He's got the complete window open here for the wide receiver 3 in an offense that's absolutely, as stated, wants to throw the ball. Russ has not always been the greatest at feeding tight ends, so those underneath routes are available to him. And statistically speaking, he hasn't been particularly good at feeding the running backs through the air. So what I'm looking for here is an extremely fast player that does something entirely different than the rest of the wide receiver core coming out. Dude was an absolute burner at Penn State, high on capital. He was a second-round draft pick. So the team has a lot invested in him and has every reason to give him the opportunity to succeed. So I like Hamler here. You can get him later on. And when the rest of the competition for wide receiver 3 are dudes like Tyree Cleveland, Kendall Hilton, and Montrell Washington, yeah, I'm pretty sure he can beat those guys out.
Yeah, it was interesting when they were talking about the injury to Tim Patrick. And they were talking about the coach was saying how Jerry Jeudy could step into some of that role, which sort of gave me pause like, oh, so Tim Patrick, were they looking at him as closer to the number 2 than they were the number 3? I don't know. It was an interesting comment to be made. Michael, do you have any thoughts on KJ Hamler? You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, I know. I had to find the mute button. No, I think KJ Hamler can do some damage there on that offense, and I also think a lot of these conversations we're going to have is for people to keep in perspective because a lot of it's integrated into draft cost. And you're not paying any kind of considerable amount for a KJ Hamler. It's not like he's catching some kind of considerable fire right now that's like going to drive him up draft board. So absolutely, I would absolutely take a shot there. And yeah, I do think that the Broncos will let Russ cook.
Well, that's what we're looking for. That's what we have been waiting for. So yeah, reports out of camp. We talked about the Melgo, talking about Javonte. Cortland Sutton supposedly is looking like the go-to target for Wilson. Now, DraftKings has the over-under at 10 wins. Sharp Football has the strength of schedule as the 17th easiest, so pretty much middle of the pack. Don, where are you going? Over or under 10 wins?
I think they get to 11, so I'm going to take the over.
All right, Michael.
I'm going to go under, but I think they're right there. I think they're, because it's going to be like 10.5, so I think it'll be 9 or 10 wins, but, this division's tough. That's going to be the recurring theme here.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to be tough. Justin, where are you?
I'm not going to say push, so I'm going to go under, but I think 10 is a perfect number for them.
You can say push.
I would say push.
All right, then then push we shall.
I say push too then.
Oh, okay. Push is fine. Mauricio broke that out a couple weeks ago with a push, so we have to allow that. Brandon?
I think it's going to be close also, but I'll take the under. I think it might take a few games for them to kind of gel, and I don't really know what the defense is going to look like. So if they're expecting Russell to just carry the team, it might take a few games and there might be a few losses in the beginning. So I'll take the under.
I'm going to also take the under for all of the above stated reasons. Plus, the Jets used to have Paul Hackett as our offensive coordinator, and I hated him with 1,000 burning suns. So I'm going to go the under. I think they might start off a little bit slower than we hope. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in to the Rider Dynasty podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow so we can keep doing what we do. If you want to do something differently and hit us up on social media, we are at Ride or Dynasty on both Twitter and Reddit. So reach out and tell us what you want to hear. Brandon, We're going to Kansas City, my friend. What's the good word out there?
Yeah, I know, with the trading of Tyreek Hill, a lot of people are down on Kansas City. I still think they are going to be very productive, and I still have Mahomes as quarterback too. I think it's pretty obvious, must draft Mahomes, but actually at the Expo, some people were talking how they dropped him down to 5 or 6. I don't see him going that far. Kelsey still tight end 1, but he's going to be the leader in targets. So the must draft for me is Juju Smith-Schuster. I've not ever really been a huge fan of him, but I think we're going to get more what he did early in his career in Pittsburgh, where he was farther down the field when Ben's arm was a noodle and he couldn't throw it more than 5 yards. There's a lot of, him just running very short routes. I think he's going to be more involved in the most consistent receiver for Kansas City. And then some to avoid. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I just don't believe it. Even though they paid him that money, he's only gone over 50 yards, 15 out of 59 games. And I was going to slash Cole Hardman, but he got hurt today. But him also 14 of 49 games only, he's only gotten 50 yards or more. I think some people need to pump the brakes on Skye Moore, at least this year. I think he's going to be great in Dynasty, but I don't know how. I don't think he's going to be the Tyreek Hill of this offense. He'll be used, but I don't think he'll have that all those targets. I think it's going to be mostly Kelsey, Juju, and just, a lot of everything else. And then,
Brandon, not to cut you off, as far as Juju goes, as your must draft, I was kind of down on Juju, and I thought I was sort of with the whole community. What surprised me, I was able to watch the Kings Classics draft at the Expo this weekend on how early Juju went in all of the drafts. And they were all much higher on him than I am, and they're much smarter than I am. So I'm thinking I'm a little bit low on where Juju is. And seeing him going as the wide receiver 34, I mean, that's bottom end wide receiver 3. So I like that take. Now, do you have a sleeper?
Yeah, it's more for a dynasty. His name's really been getting a lot of hype. Isaiah Pacheco from Rutgers. I like him at Rutgers. For people that didn't watch Rutgers last year, well, you shouldn't have, but their offense was horrific. I liked him and Bo Melton, but the offense was horrible. So, but anyway, I just don't see him taking over a full role this year with CEH. I'm still holding with CEH a little bit. 7 of his 10 games last year, he had 10 plus fantasy points. So I could see it being kind of more of a timeshare there. But I could see in the future if he shows, his skill set, which kind of fits what Kansas City wants to do. I could see him being a sleeper in dynasty formats and someone you would want to either stick on your taxi squad or have deep on your bench.
Brandon, I would have to play contrarian with you a little bit on Skye Moore for this year, only for the simple fact that with the injury to Michael Hardman today, potentially being long-term with him getting carted off. I haven't heard any news on what the actual diagnosis is, but Juju's been shelved with a knee injury most of camp, and Skye Moore is getting a lot of valuable snaps. And so I think he could potentially start jumping up at his role in this offense fairly quickly if he's the only one out there that's catching passes. Well, MVS, but you get what I mean.
That's an interesting take. So, Justin, the report is that it's a groin injury. They thought
Okay.
It was a left leg. It was the general groin area. But I don't know how. So, panel, how do we weigh that? How do we weigh preseason snaps versus the fact that he is a rookie, and generally rookies don't perform?
I mean, I think you want to take a lot of preseason with a grain of salt, but I think you also want to judge things differently by each team. And like that's the thing. It's not one blanket. This is how I'm going to assess everything. It's what's going on there, and it's like Brandon was talking about. I mean, there is no more Tyreek Hill there, so someone's going to be catching passes besides Kelsey. So I think Skye Moore is going to do a little bit more than people are expecting in his first year.
I think rookie wide receivers are really bucking the trend, too, of the rookies that aren't really performing in the first year. The wide receiver position really is starting to jump in and really be ready to go with the change in the offensive schemes in college.
And it used to be running backs, and running backs still can, right? They say they have more of an opportunity to step right into a role because there's less change. So what I'm here, there's buzz going around that Rojo might not even make the final roster. Do we think Ronald Jones makes the Chiefs this year?
It doesn't look good from what I hear.
He shouldn't. He's not very good.
Well, they've always asked that their backs catch the ball, and that's something he's never really done. So it's logical that he wouldn't. They also have a really strong young kid by last name of Gore that can do everything that Jones can.
He's also had issues with pass protection as well in the past, so that's also not good. If you're not catching passes and if you're not protecting the quarterback, it's not looking so hot. So yeah, and I will just quickly throw in, because I know Juju's name has come up twice. I am a bit of a DFS snob. I do love him in week 1 and what's probably going to be a shootout between the Chiefs and the Cardinals. Right now, just 5,200 on DraftKings, Juju. So.
I love week 1 dice rolls, Mike. I love them.
Let's do it.
All right. Now, unfortunately for the Chiefs, Sharp has them as the hardest schedule this year. They have the toughest schedule, and their over-under is 10.5 wins. That's a high number, Brandon. Are you going over-under 10.5?
I'm going to go over. I think they're going to prove some people wrong, even though they lost Tyreek Hill. I just think that means Mahomes is going to split it between more receivers other than Kelsey, and that might make them a little less predictable. So I'm going to go over.
All right, Michael.
I swear I won't give this answer every single time, but I'm going to say push again here, only because I do think that there will be a little bit of adjusting to life after Tyreek Hill. And also Travarius Ward, we'll talk about the 49ers later, but he signed with the Niners. He was their cornerback over there. I think that's going to present some problems as far as coverage, and they were already having issues there. So push.
I like that, Don.
I'm taking the under. There's just so much transition. The offensive line is different. The defensive front is a little different. There's just a lot of transition.
Justin.
I can't bet against Andy Reid. 11 wins is in their future. I think I got to go over.
Man, as a Philadelphia area resident, I can bet against Andy Reid. I'm going to take – wow, I've done under on all 3. Whatever, I'm a pessimist. I'm going the under. I think there's a lot of change. That wide receiver room really, really scares me. I mean, I don't know. I know Travis Kelce is still there. If anything happens to Travis Kelce, though, this team is cooked. I'm going under. And I'm happy to be wrong if it happens.
Tough line.
It is a tough line. Well, it's interesting how the lines, and I know we say this every show, they usually end up right about where you think they're going to be. It's almost like the people in Vegas know what they're doing. Or at least a lot more than us. Oh, Justin, I'm going to give you a minute. I don't know if we should put on some romantic music. You're obviously wearing a Chargers jersey. Do you want me to dim the lights?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, why don't you take a minute and wax poetical on your beloved Chargers?
Yeah, I gotta thank you, my friend, for giving me the layup of the Chargers and being able to talk about them tonight. And I apologize if you hear a few baby cries in the background. My little one just got home, but so the Chargers this year, I'm very high on them. Obviously, as a fan, it's going to be a lot of homer talk here. If I'm talking about the person that I really have to draft, we know about Justin Herbert, we know about Keenan Allen. I think Mike Williams is becoming a must draft and somebody that I want to go higher in ADP. He's starting to get up in the 4th and 5th round in a lot of leagues, and I think he's going to return value on that. They paid him this offseason. He's a big body target, and I think that he's always going to be that red zone target that Keenan Allen is not. So where Keenan's going to get more receptions, Mike Williams is going to get more of those high value targets and those targets down the field. If I'm looking at somebody that I'm avoiding, this one really pains me to say, but it's Austin Eckler, and it's really just for his ADP. I love Austin Eckler, obviously. He's a great guy, undrafted free agent, great story. He also is a big proponent of everything that we do, right? He's one of those players who really gets it from the fantasy space. So I love him for that. His ADP is a little high for me this year because I don't expect him to get 20 touchdowns again this year. So that's a little bit of a regression that's going to happen. And that where he's going 4th and 5th in drafts, it's just a little bit high. And the guy that's a sleeper, I've talked about him before, and it's Josh Palmer. I think he's the guy that I want to take a flyer on later in drafts. I'm hoping, obviously, for a healthy season this year from the Chargers. But if anything were to happen to Mike Williams or Keenan Allen and they miss a couple games, Josh Palmer has shown that he can step in and be a high volume reception type guy and somebody that is really killing camp right now. So, I mean, everything out of camp is raving. He looked really good today against the Cowboys in joint practice. So he's separating and catching the ball. Big things for the Chargers this year. I'm really excited for Justin Herbert's second season in Lombardi's offense.
Yeah, it was interesting. Josh Palmer is definitely getting love from the experts. Again, watching the Kings Classic, he went in the 10th round of the 2 top divisions of those drafts. So there were a ton of wide receivers who went. They start 3 and they have 3 flex spots. So there's a lot of wide receivers who go. But Josh Palmer was taken everywhere. And in the auctions, he went for the same salary as Chase Claypool, Devontae Parker, Kenny Golladay, and Michael Gallup. So just to give you an idea of where the experts are viewing him.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have a sleeper or somebody they're avoiding on the team? Any love for Spiller?
I'm particularly interested in Spiller. I love the change of pace, and that offensive line is just a bunch of maulers. They're so good and only going to get better as these guys get a little more age on them. They've got something really special going on the ground. He'll get the goal line touches. He can catch the ball. I really like Spiller a lot.
He was a 3-down back coming out of Texas A&M. I mean, I think he's exactly what the Chargers have been looking for since Melvin Gordon left, and I'm hoping that even though Josh Kelly's getting some rave out of camp this season, I'm hoping that Isaiah Spiller can carve out that RB2 role and really bring some value in fantasy later in the draft.
Fantastic. Also, let's not forget Jalen Guyton, always a dangerous deep target. If you're playing best ball, maybe if you are in a deeper redraft league, use that for your last offensive pick before you take your kicker and defense. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to take a minute to remind you of all the fantastic work going on at Gridiron. Stay tuned over the next week as Jeff, the creator, rolls out some great new features, and jump over to gridironratings.com to check them all out. We're about to switch right over to the NFC. No rest for the wicked. Now, as a theme song once went, Justin, you took the good, now you take the bad. You take them both, and there you have the Seattle Seahawks. Buddy, tell me
we didn't do the over-under for the Chargers.
We did not.
That's right.
Thank you, sir. Over-under for the Chargers. They have the 20th easiest schedule, bottom half of the league. 10 wins. Over-under, Justin.
I have to go over. It's that the fan in me, right? I can't say. I think they're going over 10 anyway. That defense looks really good. Again, I think with the Chargers, it's always health, and if they can hopefully catch that healthy bug this year, they'll smash 10 wins.
All right, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, it's either been injuries or there's been years where they've had a series of close, heartbreaking games. I'm gonna take over here. I promised you I wasn't gonna push the whole time, so I'm gonna go over. I quietly root for this team, so I hope they do big things.
All right, Don.
I'm taking the over. This team is doing a fabulous job of taking advantage of the rookie quarterback salary and just distributing that money all over the place.
Brandon.
I'll also go over. They've added a lot of key pieces on defense, and I think they'll finally stop killing themselves losing, the close games.
Well, that comes down to me. Am I going to buck the trend? Am I going to jump on the bandwagon?
You've been picking under too much, man.
Well, move on over, gentlemen. I'm coming on the over bandwagon. I love it. I am definitely hitting the over on this one. I mean, if you look, 27.9 points per game on offense last year, think the offense gets better this year, and the defense kicks it up a notch. I mean, Derwin Bag's got the James, right? Derwin James got the bag. I almost called him Derwin Bag. What the hell? Going a little bit crazy here, gentlemen. All right. I already gave the intro for Seattle. So go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, I can't give you too much trouble once you gave me the Chargers. So obviously, Seattle Seahawks, you're not expecting a whole lot from them on offense this year. It's still Pete Carroll led, but we're wondering if Pete Carroll's more on the back nine and just enjoying being the silver fox that he really is, right? And so if it's a must draft on this team, I think it's probably Rashad Penny for me. And that's hard to say as a must draft because he's always injury prone. You never know what happens. But Ken Walker went down with a hernia today. He had hernia surgery. They do expect him back week 1. But as we were talking about earlier, when a rookie misses key snaps in a preseason, I do think there's a lot to that. And so Rashad Penny closed the year last year. Everybody knows 4 weeks. He went off in nuclear. So I think they're going to be a very run-heavy team. They had 413 rush attempts last year. I could see that number ticking up with that quarterback room looking like it does. And so Rashad Penny's my must draft on this team. My avoid would be DK. I just don't know if Geno Smith is really going to give him the value that he needs to be my wide receiver 18. If he continues to fall, DK may flip really quickly to not a sleeper, but a value pick. Because I think he still is that talented and he's still going to command a lot of targets in this offense. He's not going to be competing with anybody. And if you're looking at a sleeper, I'm potentially throwing a dart at Noah Fant at tight end. I think Geno Smith is potentially going to look for someone over the middle. He's going to try to have a safety blanket. And Noah Fant, we know he has the athletic profile. We saw him in Denver. He has a chance to be pretty good. It's just, is he going to have the touchdown upside that you need a lot of times with these late tight ends in this Seattle offense? And that's the only thing that would worry me from a sleeper perspective there.
I mean, it is a massive correction on Noah Fant, who last year was going as the tight end 6, tight end 7.
Yep.
I mean, there was a lot of love for Noah Fant, and he switches teams and drops. Does anybody else think Fant is underrated? Like,
I do think he is a little underrated because I think when it was mentioned earlier when we were talking about the Broncos, the fact that Russell Wilson doesn't really have a history of targeting the tight end, and I understand that this is Pete Carroll is still the head coach here, but I think Fant can get a little more targets than we've seen other tight ends get. So I had to just in my head when that trade went down, I thought about Noah Fant because I thought he must have been so excited Russell Wilson was coming to him, and then all of a sudden it was like, nah, he's going the other way. And I was like, man, like that guy must have had a hard drink that night. But
I just imagine him looking out the window of the bus as it pulls out.
Right.
Like just looking all sad at Russell
like
pulling in.
Wave,
Yeah.
Especially going into a contract year. I mean, that poor guy.
Jeez. Yeah. That's not going to help.
What about is there any love for like a third wide receiver? Or, I mean, last year they ran 3 wide 67% of the time, but are they going to pass enough to even support 2, much less a sleeper third?
I could really see them pivoting back to 12 personnel. I just really see them pivoting back to 12 personnel. Shane Waldron came from the Rams system where they pivoted to the 12 personnel late in Jared Goff's career when he was kind of really on the downslide. And so I think with this quarterback room, that could be in their future.
I mean, you're going to see a lot of garbage time with this team. Those in the Devy community, make your peace with these guys getting one of the top 2 quarterbacks because it's just it is what it is at this point.
Yep.
Now, is there any love for the newest Seahawk, JJ Arcega-Whiteside? No, just silence.
Is he going to be a tight end for them or what?
Where all tall wide receivers who can't be wide receivers go. They said he's going to be playing a hybrid role. I don't know. I think he's going to be playing a bench role. I had high hopes for him. Maybe a change of scenery will put a little spark in him, but I don't know. He might be done. All right, gentlemen, the over-under on the 22nd hardest schedule is 5.5 wins. 5.5. That's pretty low. The lowest we've had so far tonight. Justin, over under 5.5.
I got to go under. Not a whole lot to say. Got to go under.
Okay, Michael.
Yeah, I listen, would I be shocked if they go over? No, because it's Pete Carroll there, and they do still have some pieces on defense, but I'm going to go under here.
On.
Yeah, under. I hit 6 is a low bar, but still, woof.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Brandon, 5.5 wins.
I don't know why, but I just think somehow they're going to hit 6 wins and get the over. I mean, I think they have talent on that offense. I know the quarterbacks are underwhelming, but I think they just piece it together enough to get 6 wins.
All right. Since you were the contrarian, I do not have to be. So I'm going to go under. They're going to be terrible. I mean, yeah. Drew Lock caught COVID, which is the best thing that's happened to that team in a while. So I don't know. I'm going under. It's just that's a train wreck. Oh, Michael, I think we're going to have another moment here like Justin just had. Now,
Yeah.
do you want me to turn the lights down for you?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour a little bit more in my Jameson, because that is what the last year and a half has felt like with the Jimmy Garoppolo Trey Lance saga. So I'm going to pour that, but I will take a drink because Jimmy Garoppolo is soon on the way out. So
Cheers.
So no, but seriously, this offense, it's hard to say. It's hard to go back and look at, this is what they did last year offensively. So, take that and bake it into what they're going to do this year, because I think Kyle Shanahan is now going to be able to open it up more so than he ever wanted to. I mean, at least that he ever wanted to, being a 49ers head coach. You look at, I always think about the divisional round playoff game as far as Jimmy Garoppolo and how he never had to throw the ball. Threw a couple bad passes, took the ball out of his hand, ran the ball, and there we go. Trey Lance is going to give you a different kind of element. So I'm going to say if there's 2 guys I'm targeting, I am targeting a Trey Lance, because I currently because I'm in the Fantasy Pros ECR, I do have Lance as a top 10 quarterback right now. And that's obviously because of the rushing upside. But he will make his mistakes, though. Let's make that abundantly clear. If you are in a league that's going to give some negative points for interceptions, Lance will throw a few because he's going to take a lot of risks. If there's another player I love here, though, I do love me some Brandon Ayuk. I think Ayuk is finally out of the Kyle Shanahan doghouse, which Trey Sermon is now entrenched in, for now at least. I think, listen, and I want to, don't get carried away here. When we heard all we heard last offseason, when Matthew Stafford went to the Rams, we heard Cooper Kupp was in his hip pocket. They were hanging out all the time. They talk about life. They were, doing whatever. Brandon Ayuk hung out with Trey Lance every time I looked at social media. So I do think that there's something to that. I do think that there's something to that chemistry. So I think Ayuk will do some damage in this offense. If there's somebody I'm worried about, if it's somebody I'm not drafting, I'm a big proponent of, if I'm taking a tight end, I'm going Kelsey, Mark Andrews, or I'm waiting a while. I think I'm going to wait a while on George Kittle. And that's not to say that I don't think George Kittle will be good. I think he'll be good, obviously. He's George Kittle. But for the price that you'll have to pay draft-wise, if I'm not getting a Kelsey or if I'm not getting a Mark Andrews, I think I'll wait. I mean, he's a guy, listen, he did have 2 out of the last 3 years. He has played in 14 games, but he's a guy who's dealt with issues, with injury issues. And then you go to 2020, he played in 8 games. So I just talked about the love for Ayuk, and obviously Debo signed his extension, which JJ, I told you by the time I'd come on this show, Debo would have his extension, and he does. I wonder where that puts a George Kittle. Listen, if he gets a touchdown upside, he's only had 1 year with more than 5 touchdowns, then that saves the day. But that's a guy I would kind of be a little weary on in this offense, at least in terms of fantasy. Actually, one little gem, Tyrion Davis-Price, running back, who was drafted this year, who I think was an olive branch from the Niners organization to Debo to say, listen, we're going to cut your rushing carries in half, which I'm willing to bet on. I think they cut his rushing carries in half, and I think that Tyrion Davis-Price was that answer. I think in terms of where Trey Sermon came up short last year, Davis Price will be good. And I think that he's already proven to be good in pass protection in college with LSU and so far in camp. So it's a guy I would keep an eye on.
Now, Michael, I'm not sure if you've maybe you missed the news, but Trey Sermon is in the best shape of his life.
Yeah, so is everybody else who shows up to training camp. Listen, and I loved, just like I loved Davis Price when he was drafted. I loved Trey Sermon when he was drafted. I thought it was a great pick, and I mean, I hope he runs well. I'm a diehard Niner fan. I just, after what we saw last year, I'm kind of the wait and see approach on Trey Sermon. So I'm one of those guys that, listen, if he goes off, he's gonna go off not on my watch, because I'm not gonna have him. But I hope he does.
Who is your sleeper on the team?
It would probably be Terry and Davis Price would be my sleeper. I also loved Danny Gray, but now that he caught a 70-yard touchdown in the first preseason game, and they had a little practice with the Vikings, and he caught another deep pass. So according to Twitter, he's probably no longer a sleeper. But I do think Danny Gray presents a different dynamic that Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk don't currently have. Those guys, to me, I mean, maybe Ayuk can go to the sideline, but those guys are a lot of middle of the field players. But I think Danny Gray could be that sideline receiver, run that 9 route to the end zone. So that's a guy I would keep an eye on.
Michael, do you have any worry with Deebo going as high as he is, with the kind of thought process and stance he took all offseason, that he didn't want to do the rushing work that he did last year, which was so key to his final outcome?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And that's why I like Ayuk more, because based on cost, because you're spending a lot less to draft a Brandon Ayuk than you would a Deebo Samuel. I mean, they're still going to use Deebo in some plays as far as running the ball. You know, they were practicing some options the other day just before they flew to Minnesota. So, you know, they're still going to use them. But yeah, those touches are going to get cut in half. So yeah, I do think that's an absolute cause for concern. And that's kind of why I like Ayuk.
Interesting. I also saw that Elijah Mitchell is going to miss the rest of the preseason.
Yeah, he worries me. I love him, but you know, he gets injured. This is the theme with 49er running backs. They become the number one running back. They start to get injured. CC Raheem Mostert.
Yeah.
And you know, so
Jeff Wilson
season.
Right.
He's coming back.
I mean, but it's always, as soon as you ascend to that top role, you fall.
The other
you get
thing
hurt
too,
and you drop.
I do listen. The pass run ratio was kind of even last year. But I do think that Shanahan's not going to have to rely on the running backs as much as he used to in the past. I mean, they'll still be used, but he's got Lance now. Lance presents a different dynamic than Jimmy Garoppolo, for better or for worse.
So now they have the 13th easiest schedule for this year. Their over-under is 10 wins. 10 wins. I thought that was such a good line. What do you think, Michael?
Listen, I absolutely think that there can be a push here, but I'm gonna be a fan and I'm gonna go under. And I'll say, yeah, I'm gonna go over. Okay. But you know, I think they'll split with the Rams. The Cardinals always give them fits, but they'll mop the floor with the Seahawks. And again, this is they had a very hard schedule early on last year, which tripped them up. I think this year is going to be a lot easier for them.
All right, Don, over under 10 wins.
I like the over. Lance is so creative, and Shanahan's just going to use him to the fullest. I'm so excited for this offense.
All right, Justin.
I might pull out push here again. 10-7 just sounds exactly right for a rookie quarterback, and they'll sneak in with a wild card, and then Shanahan will take them to an NFC Championship game.
Brandon?
See, he stole what I was going to do. I'll do it anyway. I go push also. 10 sounds about right, because even though they'll be able to do so much more on offense, there's going to be some games where Lance just stinks it up just because he's a rookie quarterback. So I think that's why the 10 wins is really where they're going to be.
Yeah, I agree with you. And for that reason, I'm going with the under. I think they're probably going to end up with 9. I know that's splitting hairs, but I don't think they quite make it to 10. with Lance this year. A few too many rookie mistakes and just the instability in that running back core. I don't know. I just don't trust it as much.
Totally
Make
get it.
sure you are following Michael on Twitter at the FF Realist, and make sure you're checking out all the fantastic content at fffaceoff.com. It's a great site. They put out great work, and make sure you're checking them out. Similarly, Brandon is with IDP Guys, which is also a great site. So make sure you're following him at HeyB3 and subscribing to IDP Guys. They're doing great content. So anything you guys want to push with content that you have coming out? Anything you're working on?
I mean, I actually have something in the works with a site that I will also be doing a little bit of work with this year, but I can't say that right now.
Oh. Can you tell me what it rhymes with?
No, because I'm not good at rhyming. But but really, honestly, you said it at fffaceoff.com, because again, we have a lot of writers there who are trying to break into the industry. I love it. Like, I get a DM from a guy who says, "Hey, I want to write." Well, guess what? You're now writing, and so it's cool to now be in that position to just give somebody an opportunity, to give them a platform. So fffaceoff.com, give those guys some love. They are working their tails off.
Brandon?
Just with the season coming up, still going to do the Decoding Devi. Going to do also an extra article and podcast or show with a couple people doing some DFS and some prop bets. So watch out for that.
All right, we definitely will. Back to the teams. 2 left. Don, let's go to Arizona.
Let's head to the desert. Hopefully, we won't have to write any more ridiculous contracts and mandate that people actually study. Although I think some of our students should probably get some of those mandates written into their
That's
contracts.
a good idea.
That would be pretty sweet. But here we are. Never thought I'd see the day, and yet mandatory studying written into a ridiculous big contract. Hey, good for him. Good for Kyler getting paid. And let's see what happens with the rest of the team. Just to make Kyler happy, they go out and they get Hollywood Brown. And I'll tell you what, this should be a breath of fresh air for Hollywood. Going to a place where he's got his old quarterback from the Oklahoma days, and he's the guy I'm above on. Man, I love Hollywood this year. An absolute burner. Kyler Murray last year was 3rd in the league in deep ball accuracy. These guys already had a built-in rapport, even though there was a little missed time here back and forth. That doesn't matter. It's just less wear and tear. And he's already going to walk right into the 103 targets that Christian Kirk vacated when he left. So that's 103 plus whatever D-Hop was going to get, being out the first 6 with his PED suspension. And it's all about Hollywood here. That changes the offense and gives them something they just didn't have. So I love Hollywood this year.
Going to be a lot of DBs saying goodbye to Hollywood. Long Island, little Billy Joel reference.
Amen.
All right, you got that, Michael. Who are you? What's one player you're avoiding?
So the fade comes now with James Conner. A Pittsburgher scorned never forgets, but still the statistical history is what it is. Dude had 202 attempts last year. The last time in his career he had 200 or more attempts was 2018. He followed that season with 116 touches before the wheels fell off. He does not have a history of staying healthy. And if you ever wanted to see something scream touchdown regression, look, most people get that he's not going to give you 15 again this year, but the last time he was anywhere near that, he had 12 and it fell to 4. So my expectation here is a significant regression to the mean. I mean, look, last year was the perfect storm, and hey, good on him for capitalizing and then getting his 3-year contract. For a 27-year-old back to get a 3-year deal, that's phenomenal. But they didn't do their due diligence and follow it up with getting him a competent change of pace. So there's no Edmonds like last year where there's the other guy who could take the other half of the touches. So they're expecting, oh man, here we go. I hate to say it again. They're expecting James Conner to be the bell cow, and that just does not work historically.
Now, do you have a sleeper?
You know, the guy I like isn't really a sleeper because if you've been paying attention, at least in the Dynasty format, you know who Rondale Moore is. But players take their biggest jump here from year 1 to year 2. This kid is an absolute pro and a monster. If you look at him, Yeah, he's short of stature, but a total burner and a physical freak. And right now, where his ADP is, even when D-Hop gets back and he ends up the wide receiver 3, he's going right around 137 in a crazy air raid system where he gets 6 weeks of upside, and he's going at the same basic price point as the ghost of Julio Jones and Robbie Anderson. So I will take my shot with Rondale and be happy about it.
Panel, anybody else we're looking at as a sleeper on this team?
I mean,
yeah,
I'm sorry. I was just going to quickly say that I do like the Rondale Moore pick. I forget which team we referenced earlier, but we talked about the Seahawks and is there a third wide receiver? And everybody was, blank face. I mean, this is an offense that can give a lot of action to a lot of different players.
I would say, and I don't know if you really classify him a sleeper, but somebody, I mean, to back up what Don said about James Conner, I'd say Darrell Williams is somebody that people need to look at late in their drafts. So James Conner, we know, has injury history. He could potentially go out for a few games. Darrell Williams has shown that he can be a workhorse back in an offense in Kansas City, and so he's a guy that catches the ball. This was a 2 running back system that produced 2 running backs that scored for fantasy. So I think there's opportunity to be gained, and he's free. So
the other name to know is Eno Benjamin. The camp buzz on Eno is that he's got a pretty good lock on the running back too. We'll see about all that, but he fits that kind of smaller, really good pass catching running back mold. We'll see if he can maintain that. But right now,
I
one of those two. Yeah,
I almost wonder if Darrell Williams is the James Conner backup, and Eno Benjamin's going to just step into that Chase Edmonds role. I would like to.
Sense.
My old buddy Michael Hauff loved Eno coming out of college. I know a lot of us did. He's somebody else that I was surprised to see go in all 4 versions of the Kings Classic. Both Eno and Darrell Williams went in all 4. So a little bit interesting. From camp, Trey McBride is back. He's healthy again. He should be playing, so it'll be good to see him on the field. They have the 24th easiest schedule, so definitely in the bottom half of the league. Over-under is 8.5. 8.5. Don. Over-under.
I like the over here. It's just, I felt like that line should probably be about 9.5, and then I'd really be giving pause. But with the 8.5 line, I'll take the over.
All right, Michael.
I'm 1,000%, in line with that. I'm going to go over here. I just think they'll give some of these other teams problems in the NFC West, and they'll beat up on teams outside the division. And but you got to watch for that December falter, which they tend to do now.
Right, when Call of Duty comes out and Kyler Murray.
Oh, here we go with this now.
No,
Fair.
I didn't want to say it, but I said it. Justin, over under.
Just a hunch that Vegas is trying to tell us something. This seems like a sucker line, so I'm going to take the under at 8.5.
Oh, I like your thought process, Brandon.
Yeah, I'll go over just barely if they get to the 9 wins because as someone that has Kyler Murray, I know he always gets nicked up and the he falls apart when I need him in the playoffs. So I mean, it seems like Kingsbury, I actually read something where he did this at Texas Tech too. He starts off really strong because he has the whole offseason to plan. And then, once people start catching up, then the offense starts to struggle at the back end. So I think they'll start off strong and kind of like they've done the last couple of years, peel off the end, but still I think they get to 9.
All right. Now, one of the interesting things, they are the only team in the league to run 4 wide over 10% of the time. Air raid system. So they get, it's an interesting little nugget.
I mean, that's what was advertised, the moment they give Kingsbury the job, that's, yeah.
And because of that, I'm going under. I don't know. I don't like Cliff Kingsbury. I don't think he's a very good coach. I think I don't know. I'm not a fan of his. I know they went 11-6 last year. I think if they don't improve, he's definitely going to be on the hot seat. But I'm going to go under for that reason. Brandon, that leaves you. You with the defending Super Bowl champion, LA Rams.
Boo. Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry.
What's
Yes,
going on
sir.
in LA?
So obviously Cooper Kupp had that great season last year. I think there might be a little bit of regression, but he's still going to be, a must draft. Same with Matt Stafford, the elbow issues, but it seems like a little overblown. The one must draft for me is Allen Robinson. I think he's going to really bounce back. Cooper Kupp got all those targets, but last year, Robert Woods, week 1 through 9, had 7.5 targets per game. In OBJ, when he came to the Rams week 11 through 17, had 6.5 targets per game. So there's plenty of targets to go around. Excuse me. And the avoid for me is Cam Akers. Just, he had the Achilles and then he already has a soft tissue injury. And, McVay has already come out and said that, they were going to use Darrell Henderson anyway. And, through Cam Akers' career, I looked it up. He's only had 8 games where he's had 15 plus carries. In 4 of those 8 games, it was under 4 yards per carry. So even the games he gets a lot of volume, doesn't necessarily get the yards. Some of that is the playoffs last year, so he was still coming back from the Achilles. So I understand that. Just a little worried about, the injuries and everything with him. And I'll go ahead and say the sleeper for me is tight end Tyler Higbee. I think with Van Jefferson, dealing with some injuries that they might use Higbee more in the, third receiver slot role, middle of the field. And he's done really well in 2 out of 3 years, 2 out of 3 last years. He's had over 80 targets, and he's, according to Player Profiler, it's number 5 in route participation. So I think he's kind of a sneaky tight end that could creep up to, a top 12 tight end if everything works out.
All right. So your must draft is Allen Robinson. Love that. Cam Akers is your avoid. Can't disagree. And Tyler Higbee. Gentlemen, anybody else have a sleeper on this team that they're keeping an eye on? I'm looking at Kyron Williams. Both Cam Akers and Henderson have both are dealing with soft tissue injuries. Neither of them are known to be particularly healthy in their careers. I think there's an opportunity for another guy to slip in there and steal some touches. I'm hoping that's Kyron Williams, but again, that's only in the deepest of deep leagues. Like, you should not be drafting him in your standard redraft league. Like, this is a dynasty pickup in your late rounds.
I had a lot of shares. Another guy, I had a lot of shares in Dynasty, and I still hold out hope that Tutu Atwell may be able to carve something in McVay's system. He's just a really speedy guy. I mean, he's kind of like a KJ Hamler type player. So keep an eye on him. But again, deep Dynasty type stashes.
Especially if you're best ball.
Yeah, if he gets those 1 or 2 deep targets, maybe that would all be fantastic for him. All right, gentlemen. So strength of schedule. They have the second hardest schedule in the league this year. So they are 31st, only behind the Chiefs, and their over-under is 10.5. Mr. Haye, over-under 10.5 wins.
I'm going to go over even with that tough strength of schedule. I think they have enough on offense. I think with Allen Robinson, it's, I think might be an upgrade for the second wide receiver for the team. I just feel like McVay is going to, manufacture enough wins for them to get that over.
Very good. Michael?
Oh, I am going to push. And that means I'm telling you that there's going to be some heat at the end of the year for this division yet again. But yeah, to me, the only cause for concern here, listen, it's hard to repeat. But I also think that we need to focus on the elbow as well of Matthew Stafford. So that's why I'll say push for now.
Don?
I'm going to take the over because they're just going to trade next year's entire draft for whatever they need anyway. So it'll be fine.
That's funny.
They are right. The championship contender in your Dynasty League, right? Who always just pays ahead. I love that. Justin?
Seeing as I've got 2 unders and a push already, I think they got to get to 11 wins. So I'm going to go over.
Well, I have, oh my word, I really am a negative person. I am so sorry for the gentlemen who pod with me every week. I'm so sorry for the people I interact with. I'm going with the under. I think they're going to disappoint. I don't think they can live up to what they did last year. And much like Michael said, I'm worried about that elbow. I'm worried what's going to happen the first time he hits his hand on the follow through or gets sacked.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just the only thing that really worries me about it is that Sean McVay said that this isn't the type of injury that we see from a football player. Like as far as a quarterback, it's more of a pitcher injury. So I don't know. Something doesn't sound right about it. It worries me. But I'm sorry to interrupt. It just
No, please feel free to interrupt me anytime. I was just going to stay negative. But yes, I agree. And if anything happens to Stafford, they have John Wolford. So John Wolford coming in for a game or two while Stafford recovers. Man, I think getting to 11 wins is going to be pretty hard in that situation. Guys, does anybody have anything else to say about the NFC West that we missed?
The Niners could win the division.
Looking at it, they very well could. I mean, it's their
The defense is better than people are giving them credit for. That's all I'll say.
So I guess we're pretty much locked in. It's going to be Chargers in the AFC, San Francisco in the NFC.
I love it.
And then this entire panel will be happy. All right, gentlemen, it is time for tags. Let the listeners know where they can find you and anything that you're working on. Let's start with Michael.
You can follow me over at the FF Realist. I'm going to be pumping out a lot of DFS content myself this year. Obviously check out everything going on at fffaceoff.com. I will be popping up on that podcast as well. I might have something else in the works with another site as well, but you'll have to stay tuned for that. But yeah, just again, check out what our writers are doing because they're trying to grow in this industry just like we all were. And it's cool to watch them grow. So fffaceoff.com.
Fantastic. Brandon.
You can find me on Twitter at HayB3 as it shows on the screen, and also doing Devi during the season, and also some waivers and some DFS. So just check out the IDP Guys YouTube feed, doing some shorts on some bust and sleepers on there.
You are, and Don, don't check it out because he talks about some Steelers. Don, you're up next.
So you can reach me at Rider Dynasty. The guys will get it to me because I choose happiness to stay off the social as much as I can. But
Smart man.
as always, check the beat writers. You really want the intel, check the beat writers. They're the ones who actually have the best look at what's going on because we don't have access and the national guys don't have that time.
Yep. Make sure you're checking out beat writers who have access to the team too.
If I can give, I was just going to say, I mean, to Don's point, Don's, spot on with that, especially if you're looking for fantasy and stuff, just because it gives you an indication as to what's going on in camp. But I set up my tweet alerts sometimes to certain beat writers. So if something goes down, I'm getting an alert. So yeah, definitely do that.
And if you don't know who the best beat reporter is, ask some of the fans. They'll tell you. Justin.
Yeah, so I want to say it was a pleasure being on with both Brandon and Michael first. Michael, I think it's fantastic. We've already stated what the work you all are doing with the mental health side of things. I think that is a very important thing to continue to shed a light on. You can find me at JFHornets25 on Twitter. And then pun intended, I am ride or die all season with the Rod Pod community. And so I'm looking forward to chopping it up this football year, and September 11th cannot get here soon enough.
Amen. I want to say thank you to Michael for joining us tonight. Make sure you're following him at the FF Realist on Twitter. Thank you to Brandon, who jumped on last minute to help us out. You can find him at HayB3 on Twitter. He's doing great work as well. Thank you to Don and Justin and Rob for putting the show together. And you can find me on Twitter at JJ Wenner. And if I can have just a quick minute, this is going to be our last podcast as part of Gridiron Ratings. I just wanted to thank our founder, Jeff DiMatteo, for all of his support over the past year. I am excited to see what is next for this exciting group of writers and content creators, and I'm looking forward to what they do next. I have nothing but positive memories, so thank you. Next week, we are going to be joining the IDP Guys podcast network. I'm excited to be joining forces with some of my good friends, Nate, Johnny the Greek, and all of the IDP crew, including Brandon, who I've known for so long and have loved watching their work. So tune in next week with the IDP Guys as we welcome my buddy Trip Brebner from Football Guys to continue our divisional debriefs with the AFC and NFC South. So from all of us to all of you, be safe, be well, and as always, boat drinks, my friends, boat drinks.